Tonight, a moment that may redefine the rules of power in Washington is unfolding right before our eyes. What appears to be a sudden move by the Senate is anything but sudden. Behind the headlines, behind the statements, and far from the cameras, a deeper strategy has been quietly taking shape, one that now places Donald Trump at the center of a political storm unlike any before. The question is no longer just what is happening, but how long this has been in motion, and what it could mean for what comes next. Breaking: Senate moves against Trump. What they're not telling you in a dramatic turn of events shaking the political landscape, the Senate has taken a bold step that could have far-reaching consequences for former President Donald Trump and potentially the future of American politics itself. While headlines focus on the surface-level developments, there's a deeper story unfolding behind closed doors that many Americans aren't hearing. A move that signals more than politics. The Senate's latest action isn't just another partisan maneuver. It reflects growing tensions within Washington that extend beyond party lines. While some lawmakers frame the move as a necessary step toward accountability, others argue it sets a dangerous precedent that could reshape how political power is challenged in the years ahead. What's striking is not just the decision itself, but the speed and coordination behind it. Insiders suggest this isn't a spontaneous reaction, but part of a broader, long-developing strategy that has been quietly gaining momentum. Behind closed doors, strategic calculations, sources familiar with the situation, indicate that key Senate figures have been engaged in intense discussions for weeks, possibly months, laying the groundwork for this moment. These conversations reportedly involve not just legal considerations, but political timing, public perception, and the potential ripple effects on upcoming elections. Critically, some lawmakers appear to be weighing more than just the immediate implications. There's a growing awareness that any action involving Trump carries enormous political risk, energizing his base while also galvanizing opposition. What the public isn't being told, while official statements emphasize transparency and rule of law, several crucial questions remain unanswered. What internal disagreements exist within the Senate about this move? How might this impact independent voters who could decide future elections? Is this action driven purely by legal concerns, or are there deeper political motivations at play? Perhaps most importantly, what happens next could be even more significant than what's already occurred. Legal experts warn that the consequences may extend well beyond one individual, potentially influencing how future leaders are investigated and challenged. A nation watching closely across the country, reactions are sharply divided. Supporters of the move see it as long overdue, while critics warn it risks deepening political divisions at a time when unity is already fragile. What's undeniable is this: the Senate's decision marks a pivotal moment. Whether it leads to accountability, escalation, or unforeseen consequences remains to be seen. The hidden strategy behind the Senate's sudden action beneath the surface of what appears to be a swift and decisive move, a far more calculated strategy seems to be unfolding within the Senate. The timing, coordination, and messaging all point toward a deliberate effort that has been quietly shaped over an extended period. This is not the kind of action that emerges overnight. It reflects layers of planning, negotiation, and internal alignment that rarely make it into public view. Behind closed doors, lawmakers are believed to have been weighing not just the legal dimensions, but the broader political consequences that could ripple across the national landscape. What makes this strategy particularly striking is the level of discipline in its execution. Key figures appear to be moving in sync, suggesting that critical groundwork had already been laid long before the public became aware. This includes assessing public sentiment, anticipating backlash, and crafting a narrative that can withstand intense scrutiny. The messaging itself seems carefully calibrated, strong enough to signal seriousness, yet measured enough to avoid immediate escalation beyond control. There is also an undercurrent of risk management embedded in this approach. Any action involving a figure as polarizing as Donald Trump carries the potential to energize both supporters and critics. Senate leaders are likely factoring in how this move could reshape voter engagement, influence party unity, and alter the balance of power in future elections. This suggests a dual-layered strategy, one that addresses the immediate issue, while simultaneously positioning for long-term political impact. Another dimension often overlooked is the role of internal intelligence and consultation. Lawmakers do not operate in isolation. They rely on legal advisors, political strategists, and policy experts who help map out potential scenarios. These behind-the-scenes discussions are where the real strategy takes shape, evaluating not only what action to take, but how it will be perceived across different segments of the population. Every step is likely being measured against possible outcomes, from legal challenges to shifts in public opinion. The element of surprise also plays a crucial role. By controlling the timing and flow of information, Senate leaders can shape the narrative before opponents have a chance to fully respond. This creates a temporary advantage, allowing them to define the terms of the debate and set the tone for how the issue is understood by the public. It is a tactic often used in high-stakes political environments, where perception can be as influential as reality. What remains largely unseen is how much coordination extends beyond the Senate itself. There are indications that broader political networks may be involved, aligning messaging across different platforms and institutions. This amplifies the impact of the move, turning a single action into a multi-layered campaign that resonates far beyond Washington. Power versus precedent, a dangerous political turning point. At the heart of the Senate's move lies a deeper and more complex tension between the exercise of power and the preservation of precedent. This is not merely about one political figure or one moment in time. It is about defining the boundaries of authority and determining how far institutions are willing to go in holding leaders accountable. The implications of this balance extend far beyond the immediate situation, potentially reshaping the rules that govern future political conflicts. The concept of precedent carries significant weight in any democratic system. Once a line is crossed, it often becomes easier to cross it again under different circumstances. Critics of the Senate's action argue that it risks opening a door that may be difficult to close, creating a framework that could be used in ways that were never originally intended. Supporters, on the other hand, contend that failing to act would set an equally dangerous precedent, one where accountability is selectively applied or avoided altogether. This tension creates a high-stakes environment where every decision is magnified. Lawmakers are not only considering the immediate impact of their actions, but also how those actions will be interpreted and replicated in the future. The fear of setting a new normal looms large, influencing both the arguments made in public and the calculations made in private. Power, in this context, is not just about authority, it is about the ability to shape outcomes and influence the direction of governance. The Senate's move can be seen as an assertion of institutional strength, a signal that certain lines cannot be ignored. Yet this assertion also raises questions about balance. When power is exercised in unprecedented ways, it can blur the distinction between enforcement and overreach, creating uncertainty about where the limits truly lie. The role of political motivation cannot be ignored in this dynamic. Even actions grounded in legitimate concerns can be perceived as strategic or partisan, especially in a deeply divided political climate. This perception can erode trust, making it harder for institutions to maintain credibility in the eyes of the public. The challenge, therefore, is not only to act, but to ensure that the action is seen as fair, justified, and consistent with established principles. There is also the broader question of how this moment will be remembered. Political history is shaped by pivotal decisions that redefine norms and expectations. Whether this is viewed as a necessary step toward accountability or a risky expansion of power will depend largely on what follows. The long-term impact may not be immediately visible, but it will likely influence how future leaders, lawmakers, and citizens understand the relationship between authority and restraint. What both parties aren't saying publicly. In the wake of the Senate's controversial move involving Donald Trump, both major political parties are presenting carefully crafted public narratives while withholding deeper internal concerns. Official statements emphasize principle, legality, and constitutional responsibility, yet insiders suggest a far more complicated reality unfolding behind the scenes. Lawmakers on both sides are reportedly navigating internal disagreements, with some questioning not the action itself, but its long-term consequences. Within party ranks, there is growing unease about how this moment could redefine political norms. Some members fear that pushing too aggressively could alienate moderate voters, while others worry that hesitation might be perceived as weakness. These divisions are largely absent from public messaging, where unity is projected as a strategic necessity. Privately, discussions are said to revolve around electoral impact, media framing, and potential backlash. Political operatives are closely monitoring public sentiment, recognizing that perception could shift rapidly depending on how events unfold. The silence on these internal debates highlights a broader strategy: control the narrative publicly while managing uncertainty internally. Timing is everything. Why this move happened now? The timing of the Senate's action has raised critical questions across political circles, with many analysts pointing to a convergence of strategic factors rather than coincidence. While the official explanation centers on due process and legislative responsibility, sources indicate that the decision aligns closely with evolving political calculations tied to upcoming election cycles. Momentum appears to have been building gradually, with key developments reaching a tipping point that made immediate action more advantageous than delay. Lawmakers are believed to have considered not only the legal readiness of their case, but also the broader political climate, including voter engagement trends and shifting public opinion. By acting at this precise moment, the Senate may be attempting to shape the narrative before opposition forces can fully mobilize. The element of timing allows leaders to seize control of the political conversation, framing the issue on their own terms. At the same time, it places pressure on opponents to respond quickly, often without the benefit of thorough preparation. Internal divisions that could change the outcome as the Senate intensifies its actions surrounding Donald Trump. Emerging reports indicate that internal divisions within both parties could significantly influence the final outcome. While public appearances suggest unity and resolve, multiple sources confirm that disagreements are quietly shaping the direction and pace of developments. These fractures are not always ideological. In many cases, they stem from differing assessments of political risk, legal strength, and electoral consequences. Some lawmakers are reportedly urging a more aggressive approach, viewing the situation as a defining moment for institutional authority. Others are advocating caution, warning that overreach could backfire and shift public sympathy. These competing perspectives are creating a delicate balancing act for party leadership, which must maintain cohesion while navigating internal resistance. The impact of these divisions extends beyond strategy meetings. Voting dynamics, legislative timing, and even public messaging may be influenced by these behind-the-scenes tensions. Observers note that in closely contested decisions, even a small number of dissenting voices could alter the trajectory of the Senate's actions, making internal unity a critical but fragile factor. The legal angle versus the political reality. At the center of the Senate's move lies a complex interplay between legal justification and political calculation, raising questions about where one ends and the other begins. Officially, the process is framed as a matter of law, grounded in constitutional authority and procedural integrity. However, political analysts argue that the reality is far more nuanced, with legal arguments often intersecting with strategic objectives. Legal experts involved in the process are said to be meticulously building cases designed to withstand scrutiny, focusing on evidence, precedent, and procedural accuracy. At the same time, political strategists are evaluating how these legal steps will be perceived by the public and leveraged in the broader narrative surrounding Donald Trump. This dual-track approach highlights a fundamental tension. Actions taken in the name of law must also survive the court of public opinion, where interpretation can be influenced by partisan perspectives and media framing. The challenge for lawmakers is ensuring that legal credibility is not overshadowed by political skepticism, even as both forces continue to shape the unfolding situation. The Senate's actions surrounding Donald Trump are raising serious questions about how future presidents may be held accountable, with lawmakers quietly acknowledging this could redefine the boundaries of executive scrutiny and open the door to more aggressive investigations in years ahead. As political pressure builds, insiders suggest upcoming elections are playing a silent but decisive role, with strategists closely analyzing how moves against Donald Trump could influence voter turnout, reshape campaign narratives, and shift momentum across key battlegrounds. As the Senate advances its actions involving Donald Trump, a widening gap is emerging between the public narrative and behind-the-scenes negotiations, where sources indicate critical compromises, strategic messaging shifts, and undisclosed concerns are shaping decisions far beyond what is being communicated openly. The broader impact of the Senate's move against Donald Trump is expected to extend well beyond the immediate situation, with analysts warning of ripple effects that could influence institutional power, future investigations, and the overall tone of political conflict across the United States. What we've uncovered goes far beyond a single decision or a single figure, from hidden strategies and internal divisions to the delicate balance between law and political reality. Every layer reveals a system under pressure, navigating uncharted territory. The Senate's actions are not unfolding in isolation. They are being shaped by timing, influenced by elections, and driven by forces both visible and concealed. And as the gap between public messaging and private negotiations continues to widen, the consequences are already beginning to ripple outward, touching institutions, future leadership, and the very framework of accountability itself.